Amazing revelation. Maid's touch unveils hidden danger. Billionaire's driver armed with a gun. Maria Sanchez straightened the carefully arranged flowers in the Thornton mansion, her heart racing as she dusted yet another chandelier. Each crystal glimmered like the dream she carried for her family back in Mexico, the ailing mother, the younger siblings, each dependent on her remittances. In the extravagant world of Woodridge Estates, she felt a mixture of pride and pressure, her hands trembling ever so slightly with the weight of their expectations. As she swept her gaze towards the kitchen, the tension anchored there felt suffocating. Jake, Charles Thornton's driver, loomed like a shadow in her peripheral vision. He was a gruff figure, rugged from years in the military. His eyes were pools of darkness, haunted, and they sent jarring anxiety through her veins. Why did the air thicken whenever he entered a room? She remembered the whispers of secrets entwining the Thornton family, the murmured conversations she overheard late at night, filled with urgency that made her skin crawl. Hesitation gripped her as she scrubbed the counters, thoughts spinning viciously. What if she was wrong? What if her instincts were merely a product of the eerie household she found herself in, a place where opulence clashed with unspeakable fears? Yet deep down, a dread clawed at her, whispers of Emma, the Thorntons' only daughter, the perfect epitome of grace who had vanished contradictorily into thin air after the gala. The chaos that ensued was palpable, the panic setting in like a thick fog that refused to lift. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she dusted in a daze, Maria's thoughts spiraled deeper into her turmoil. Each step closer to Jake felt treacherous. She remembered a fleeting encounter with him that left an indelible mark, a sliver of time she wished to erase. The moment she glanced into the glove compartment of his car and saw that hidden firearm, an icy shock coursed through her, coiling around her stomach like a vice. The realization struck like a thunderclap, cracking her world apart. What if Jake was involved in Emma's disappearance? With every brief exchange they had, his demeanor shifted from gruff to unsettlingly menacing. Constraining her fears, she pushed her mind into overdrive, wrestling with her loyalty to the Thorntons. What would they think if they knew? Just a housekeeper? A foreigner? They would silence her, dismiss her worries. Torn between self-preservation and the urge to protect a family she had grown to care for, Maria felt the urgency coil tighter. If she did nothing, would she forever live with the guilt of knowing something was horrifically wrong? Would never acting define her as the coward she feared to be? As dusk settled over the manicured gardens of Woodridge Estates, uncertainty brushed over her like a cold shiver. Maria stood at a crossroads, her heart caught between two worlds, the familial responsibility that drew her back to Mexico and her newfound connection to the Thornton family. Who could she trust? The weight of maneuvering through darkness surged through her, the stakes mounting as she prepared to peel back the layers of truth that tethered her to Jake, and with it, new revelations awaited the dawn. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the Thornton estate. Maria's resolve hardened as the cool evening air wrapped around her. Doubt clung to her like a shroud, heavy and suffocating, yet within that weight, a flicker of determination ignited. She needed to discover the truth about Jake, the gun, and Emma's disappearance. But how? Feeling the intensity of the air change, she stepped back into the warmth of the mansion, her mind racing through a labyrinth of possibilities. Maria recalled the conversation she overheard, cryptic exchanges that suggested a hidden world beneath the surface of wealth and pretense. If Emma had been caught in that world, perhaps the key to her disappearance lay somewhere within those walls. Gathering her courage, Maria resolved to observe Jake more closely. She had always been attentive, catching details unnoticed by others, a skill honed through necessity back home. It was time to wield that talent as a weapon, not for destruction, but for uncovering truth. As she moved through the house, she maintained a facade of seamless service, serving dinner, arranging decor, all while keeping an eye out for Jake. Each time he entered a room, the atmosphere shifted, an electricity that prickled her skin. It was unsettling, but also captivating. There was strength in his presence, a coiled tension that hinted at deeper conflicts. As the night wore on, she found herself drawn into the Thornton household's dynamic during a gathering of friends in the lavish lounge.
Laughter echoed against the walls, but beneath it lay hushed undertones, layers of conversation that seemed critical. Maria stood attentively in the corner, serving drinks, her ears finely tuned to the murmured words passing like whispers in the wind. "Charles is worried about the new hire," one of the guests said, just loud enough for Maria to catch his name, Harrison. "Emma's situation has made everyone on edge. Even Jake is acting unusual." The mention of Jake sent a chill down Maria's spine. Was he showing strain because of guilt, or was there something more sinister in play?
Each detail she gathered felt like a breadcrumb leading deeper into the woods of uncertainty. That night, when the guests left, darkness enveloped the estate. Alone with her thoughts, Maria found herself at the threshold of revelation. Would she confront Jake, or was it wiser to seek allies, the very people she had intended to protect? A decision loomed ahead, crucible-like, and with it the gnawing realization that her choices would shape not only her path, but potentially the outcome of Emma's fate. But what if she went to the authorities? The thought made her stomach twist. How could she convey the urgency of her fears without dismissing her own place as a mere maid? In the quiet of the empty kitchen, a plan began to germinate. She would gather evidence, notes, hidden objects, anything that could substantiate her concerns. The weight of familial responsibility continued to pull at her, but the desire to act was now crystallizing into tangible steps. Restlessness coursed through her as she drifted into slumber that night, dreams haunted by unanswered questions. The mansion seemed alive, its walls whispering secrets and casting shadows that loomed dangerously close to the heart of her dilemma. By morning, Maria felt the shift within herself. She was no longer a passive observer, but an active participant in a web fraught with danger. It was time to confront Jake, face her fears, and surrender her hesitations to the urgency of truth. As she prepared for the day, the echo of determination resonated within her, a call to action. The moment of confrontation approached. Would she rise as a protector of truth, or would fear chain her? The thoughts spiraled, and the clock ticked closer. Would she find the courage to breach the recesses of danger and bring forth the light of revelation buried within the Thornton estate? The morning light crept through the grand windows, illuminating the marble floors and gilded furnishings of the Thornton estate. Maria paced the kitchen, her heart pounding a steady rhythm of urgency. Today felt different, the air charged with a sense of impending confrontation. She gathered her thoughts like ingredients for a recipe, each piece vital to the concoction of her resolution. The first step involved disarming her fear of confrontation. Memories of home flooded her mind. Back in her small town, drama swirled like a summer storm, but she had learned to stand firm amidst chaos. This experience, however, was a tempest within an ocean of uncertainty, a world of wealth and power that felt alien to her. But she couldn't flinch now. With Emma's life potentially hanging in the balance, she would not become another casualty of doubt. Maria weighed her options, each one a potential path filled with both risk and reward. Confronting Jake directly felt fraught. She could be dismissed or worse, intimidated. But without action, what would become of Emma? She pictured her friend's face, vibrant yet clouded with concern. The thought fueled her. Determining to gather tangible evidence first, Maria ventured upstairs, heart racing as she navigated the sprawling estate's hallways. She knew Jake's office was usually kept locked, but she also remembered him leaving it slightly ajar on multiple occasions. Reaching the door, she paused. Taking a deep breath, she turned the knob slowly, the creak echoing like a warning through the air. Inside, the shadows loomed as thick as the silence, punctuated only by the whispers of the air conditioning. Her gaze swept the room, landing on a disorganized desk, papers strewn across its surface, remnants of Jake's chaotic mind. With furtive glances toward the door, Maria began scanning the documents, adrenaline surging with each piece of paper turned. At first, there were only notes detailing mundane business meetings and scattered thoughts about the estate's renovations. But near the bottom of a haphazard stack, something caught her eye, a folded piece of paper with a familiar scrawl. It was an address, one that resonated with a pulse of dread. The last address Emma had mentioned before her disappearance surfaced in her mind. Maria's blood ran cold. Had Jake been involved in something that transcended mere corporate affairs? This could be pivotal evidence. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approached. Panic rippled through her. She couldn't be found here. With quick reflexes, Maria stuffed the note into her pocket, her heart racing. Moving silently, she slipped out of the office just as Jake entered the corridor, his expression heavy with thought. He paused,
The air thickened with tension as they locked eyes. "Maria," he greeted, his tone neutral yet sharp. The undercurrent between them crackled, thick with unspoken words. She felt the walls closing in, her instinct screaming for flight, but she fought to steady her respiration, reminding herself of her purpose. "Can I help with anything, Mr. Thornton?" she replied, carefully masking the pulse of anxiety that coursed through her. Jake studied her for a fleeting moment that felt eternal. "Just handling some family business," he said curtly, brushing past her without any further explanation. As he vanished down the hall, Maria leaned against the wall, her thoughts swirling in a cyclone of anxiety and determination. She now held a critical piece of information, but what would she do with it? Going to the authorities seemed increasingly perilous. The game was afoot. She needed to figure out Jake's next moves, to delve deeper into his world without exposing her hand. She had to outsmart the man who loomed larger than life, an adversary draped in charm and privilege. But beneath the surface of her plans lurked a raw fear, coiling tightly around her resolve. What if, in seeking truth, she became a target herself? The clock ticked ominously, and the stakes grew higher with every breath. With a newfound sense of clarity, Maria understood her path forward lay in meticulous observation and cunning strategy.
She would become a shadow within the walls of this estate, no longer just a maid, but a detective, crafting her plan with stealth and precision. But she prepared to step back into her role, purpose ignited within her. Hidden dangers thrummed beneath the surface of the pristine facade. She was ready to uncover the secrets that could unravel everything. But just as she turned to leave, the distant ringing of a phone echoed through the hallways, and a chilling utterance floated into her ears. A voice she recognized showed up in stark clarity, confirming her worst fears. Make sure she doesn't find out. Do whatever it takes. The realization hit like a thunderclap. Maria was being watched. The stakes had risen, and she was about to face the storm head-on. Would she find the leverage she needed, or would her pursuit of truth lead straight into peril? The walls of the Thornton estate felt more oppressive than ever. Maria stealthily navigated the corridors, her mind racing as she processed the chilling revelation that she was under surveillance. Fear tinged every step she took, layering doubt over her plan. Yet within that fear, a fierce resolve began to blossom. She could not turn back, the stakes were too high, and Emma's fate hung on her next move. Avoiding Jake felt like playing an elaborate game of chess, each move calculated and strategic. The fleeting moments she spent with him were fraught with tension, each conversation laced with underlying truths neither wished to disclose. His casual demeanor belied the darkness she now suspected loomed just beneath the surface. With the new information tucked securely in her pocket, Maria had become both predator and prey in this twisted game. Returning to her duties, the familiar rhythm of her tasks provided a deceptive sense of normalcy. As she meticulously tidied up the vast kitchen, she allowed herself to reflect, her mind whirring with the day's events. The clatter of dishes echoed through the room, a stark contrast to the quiet turmoil unraveling inside her. In the recesses of her thoughts, another possibility emerged: the driver. He had been a fleeting figure in her periphery, a ghost haunting the estate with unyielding loyalty to Jake. Though unassuming, Maria began to wonder if he was an ally or an enemy in disguise. There was something unsettlingly precise in the way he executed his responsibilities, and that astonishment nudged her to dig deeper. Maria decided to keep watch. During her shifts, she kept an eye on the driver's movements, noting how he operated with both skill and loyalty. But her observations soon revealed distant, guarded moments where he squared off with Jake. Conversations exchanged between them felt charged with a significance she could not yet decipher, but the dynamics felt like a carefully choreographed performance veiling darker undertones.
Each day she observed him, her instinct wavered between a desire to uncover his secrets and a cautious reverence for his ability to manipulate shadows around him. She felt her own faculties sharpening. Past experiences resonated as she clung to her instinctual knack for reading people. Perhaps, she thought, this driver held keys to unraveling Jake's ulterior motives, the hidden operations swirling beneath the estate's polished veneer. Grappling with her thoughts left her restless at night, and every passing hour intensified her urgency. She had to make contact, but how? Approaching the driver directly posed its own dangers. What if he was loyal to Jake's cause and tipped him off? Or worse, what if he turned hostile?
As morning sun filtered through her window, Maria resolved to create a diversion. She enlisted the help of unnoticed routines, the daily deliveries, the hustle of the household, and the myriad distractions that permeated the estate. Perhaps in the chaos, she could forge an opening. Her heart raced as she meticulously crafted her plan, a single misstep sending her spiraling into the shadows of her fears. That day, as the estate buzzed with activity, Maria seized her moment. She concocted a reason to linger near the driver's usual haunts, perhaps aiding with a delivery or fetching supplies. Each minute stretched with anticipation, her breath hitching every time she caught sight of him. When their paths finally crossed, her pulse quickened. "Can we talk?" she ventured, her voice steady, defying the whirlwind of anxiety inside. He paused, a flicker of curiosity crossing his features. "About what?" Maria pressed her lips together, gauging whether to continue. The air was heavy with tension, the stakes flooding her senses with urgency. The correct response could lead to a pivotal shift, a connection that might unveil deeper insights into Jake's web. But before she could reply, the sudden exclamation from a passing staff member interrupted, sending pulses of alarm coursing through her. Would this moment slip away, like earth through her fingers? As she turned back toward the driver, a flicker of acknowledgement passed between them, and she felt her resolve crystallizing. "There's something happening here, something dangerous," she said, urgency lacing her words. And just as quickly she realized, confronting the driver was just the beginning. What truths would be revealed, and could she trust him in the end? She had opened a door, and now she would have to prepare for whatever steps through it next. The web was tightening, and each revelation felt like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. In the brief moment of connection with the driver, a mixture of hope and trepidation washed over Maria. She had initiated contact, but the stark reality of her vulnerability settled in. If the driver was aligned with Jake, her gamble could cost her everything. "Meet me in the garden after your shift," he murmured, his voice low.
The abruptness of his response caught her off guard, but Maria took it as an opportunity, an opening she had desperately sought. As she resumed her chores, her mind oscillated between anticipation and anxiety. Each tick of the clock amplified her apprehension, and she found it all-consuming. The thought of trusting him felt risky. However, the prospect of unraveling Jake's machinations steeled her nerve. That evening, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows across the estate. Maria slipped into the garden under the guise of tending the flowers. Every rustle of the leaves heightened her senses. She felt like an infiltrator, waiting on the precipice of discovery. When the driver appeared, his presence was both reassuring and unsettling. "You didn't think I'd come, did you?" he asked, his tone laced with a hint of amusement. Maria quickly dispelled her unease, focusing on the weight of her purpose. "I need to know what's going on with Jake," she pressed, her voice steadier than she felt. The shadows around them seemed to fortify her resolve. "I think he's hiding something." "Everyone hides something," he replied cryptically, leaning against a bench, arms crossed, a stance that belied judgment, but the intensity of his gaze drew her in. "I know he's dangerous," she said, leaning closer, urgency in her voice. "Emma's safety is at stake. If you're not with him, just tell me what you know." For a moment he was silent, a slight crease appearing on his brow, as if weighing the potential fallout of disclosing truths. Maria felt her heart race, and a bead of sweat formed on her brow. This was the crucial moment. Every instinct urged her to press harder, yet she understood the delicate balance of coaxing information without scaring him off. "He's in deep with some real players, Maria. It's not just about controlling a fortune, it's about keeping his power intact," he finally admitted, his cool expression replaced by an undeniable seriousness. "If he sees you as a threat, well, he won't hesitate." As the weight of his words sank in, Maria was faced with the unsettling realization of the peril surrounding her world. "Are you going to help me then?" she asked, her voice a whisper yet charged with resolve. His hesitation lingered in the air like a storm cloud. "I don't want to get caught in the crossfire, you understand. But I might know something, pieces of information that could be valuable for you." "Any information could save Emma," Maria urged. "You have to understand what's at stake." But did she really know what she was asking of him? He shifted, the tension palpable, the glow of the garden lights casting shadows over his face in ways that made his true intentions murky. "I'll help, but you have to trust me, and we can't meet here again. It's too risky." A wave of relief washed over her, mixed with doubt. Trust, however fragile, began to form between them, yet Maria's instincts warned her that trust had its limits. She had made progress, but a sinister layer loomed just out of clarity. "Where do we meet?" she inquired, her resolve sharpening. "We'll set a plan." "Tomorrow night, by the east entrance. Be careful," he instructed, glancing over his shoulder, signaling the need for haste. As he stepped away, Maria's mind raced, not just with possibilities, but with the haunting weight of her circumstances. She was entering deeper waters, each decision bearing the burden of consequence. Could she navigate this dangerous territory, or was she dangerously out of her depth? A new determination ignited within her as she mulled over the rapidly approaching meeting. The sun rose the next day with a fresh sense of urgency, and Maria's path oscillated between hope, fear, and fierce determination. It was more than just information she sought. It was a fragile thread weaving her fate together. With every step she took, the realization struck deep. A confrontation loomed, and she needed to prepare herself for whatever shadows awaited her next. The stakes had shifted, and as she readied herself for the following night, one undeniable truth emerged. The time had come to face Jake. The day dragged on with an unnerving slowness, each tick of the clock a stark reminder of the impending meeting. Maria busied herself with tasks, but her mind was a whirlpool of thoughts spiraling into concerns about Jake and the potential danger looming over her and Emma. As she arranged the vases in the dining room, her fingers fumbled. Was it too naive to think she could unravel the complexities of Jake's world? Yet beneath the fatigue settled an ember of determination. Each moment spent preparing for the night ahead was infused with a fortifying resolve. She imagined the conversation with the driver, a mental rehearsal with countless possibilities cascading through her mind. Would he provide concrete details about Jake? Could she trust him enough to share her plan? Her internal conflict deepened. Trust was a currency that could cost her dearly if spent unwisely. The drive to protect Emma eclipsed her trepidation, propelling her towards the uncharted territory of risk and confrontation. Maria returned to her small room, the evening quiet but charged, shadows enveloping her as she mentally mapped out her approach. The stillness was deceiving, mimicking the calm before a storm. There was a growing realization that she was not just stepping towards a meeting, they were moving towards an inevitable clash that could alter the trajectory of their lives. As night fell, she donned a simple dress, the fabric light against her skin, smoothing over her nerves but also drawing attention to her resolve. She glanced at her reflection, studying the determination etched in her features. Could she face Jake, demand answers? She had grown so accustomed to the surroundings and routines that had once felt safe, but the knowledge of who Jake truly was now tainted that comfort.
There was power in confronting the truth, and it was her turn to reclaim that power. After what felt like an eternity, the time came. Maria slipped through the dimly lit corridors towards the east entrance, shadows flickering like her racing heart. Each step resonated with an urgency that seemed to grow heavier as she approached the rendezvous point. The garden lay dark, its air thick with expectation, and she felt an electric thrill run through her. The driver was already waiting, his silhouette blending with the darkness. When she stepped into the moonlight, he straightened, his expression unreadable. "Did you bring anyone?" he asked, scanning the surroundings with a vigilance that made her heart race. "No," she replied, her voice steady, steeling herself against his scrutiny. "I came alone." "Good," he nodded, a flicker of respect passing between them. "It's safer this way." "Tell me what you know." Her tone was firm, evidence of her readiness spilling over into the air. This time she wasn't just a participant, she was a player in this game of uncertainty. He hesitated for a moment before digging into his pocket, producing a small device, a voice recorder. "I've got some recordings, whispers of his business dealings," he explained, his eyes narrowing slightly as he spoke. "But diving into that world comes with consequences." Maria's heart pounded harder. The prospect of having evidence against Jake was exhilarating but terrifying. What would she do with this information? How could she ensure it didn't fall into the wrong hands? "And what about you?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing with a mix of determination and concern. "What's your angle in all of this?" "Let's just say I have my reasons for wanting Jake out of the picture." The intensity of his gaze held hers, but she sensed a layer of vulnerability beneath his tough exterior. Each secret he held was another thread in the complex fabric of her reality, an intricate weave of dangers and alliances. The air crackled with unspoken possibilities, and Maria found herself at the cusp of a momentous decision. As she absorbed his words, she felt adrenaline surging through her veins. The stakes were high, and the price of knowledge could be her safety or worse. It was her moment to wrest control from the menacing shadows of her life, to harness knowledge as a weapon. The impending confrontation loomed larger, and with it the potential to shift the balance in her favor.
"Whatever it takes," she declared, a fierce determination in her eyes. "I'm ready to face him." But just as the conversation thickened with tension, a distant sound broke through the night, a car engine, low and ominous. The driver's expression hardened, and a flicker of fear crossed his face. "Maria, stay back." The revelation of that sound hung in the air like a gasp, prompting Maria's heart to race. An adrenaline-fueled urgency surged within her as she recognized the gravity of her choice.
Would she retreat into the shadows once more, or stand her ground against the darkness gathering around her? In that split second, Maria knew one undeniable truth. The real presence of danger was closing in, and she was about to be plunged headfirst into a confrontation that would either fortify her path to freedom or seal her fate. Instinct kicked in, sharp and unyielding. Maria's muscles tensed, her body teetering between the urge to flee and the primal instinct to stand her ground. This was the moment she had prepared for, wasn't it? Yet the palpable fear in the driver's eyes sent a shiver down her spine. She instinctively took a step back, but the impulse to confront her fears held her in place. "What do you mean, stay back?" she whispered, the gravity of that warning swirling around her like a tempest. The engine noise grew louder, and she caught a glimpse of headlights cutting through the darkness. In that flickering light, shadows began to dance over the garden, each one representing the uncertainties of her situation. The driver moved quickly, nearly pushing her into the dense foliage. "You need to get inside, now." His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Trusting him felt precarious, yet he had already shown signs of protecting her, and the deadly urgency carved a path for her anxious hope. Before she could argue, the car rolled into view, lights sweeping over the garden, illuminating her narrow escape route. Heart pounding, Maria's mind raced through contingencies. When would she have another chance to confront Jake? Is this how it would all end, snatched away at the very moment she felt empowered? With her fate hanging delicately in the balance, urgency forced a decision. She turned toward the driver. "We need to move, now." As they darted toward the nearest entrance, adrenaline propelled her forward. The clang of metal doors echoed in the night, amplifying her heartbeat. Fear intertwining with determination. She could not let Jake slip away again. She would not walk back into the life of fear that had cloaked her for so long. Together, they moved down the corridor, the weight of imminent confrontation ever present. Who was driving that car? What did Jake know? Maria's mind grappled with the chaos that threatened to drown her, but she anchored her focus in self-reliance. With every step, she deliberately shunned the previous doubts that tried to creep back into her mind. They stopped at a door, pressed against the wall, listening intently. The engine finally cut off, replaced by the sound of boots hitting the gravel outside. "It sounds like his men," the driver said, his brow furrowed. "They've been tracking Jake's movements, likely know he's in town." Maria clenched her fists, a rush of recognition washing over her. This was about more than just Jake. This was about a network that stretched beyond her understanding, and she was a pawn positioned in the midst of it. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice a trembling whisper. "We have to find out what they're planning, and we need to confront Jake before he gets wind of this," he replied in fervent tones, his resolve matching her own. "But we have to be smart about it." Another blast of noise rang out, a door slamming, followed by gruff voices. Maria felt the threat of discovery creep closer, and a flicker of doubt flashed through her resolution. Could she face him without losing herself to that world again? She wouldn't be the scared plaything anymore. She needed to reclaim her narrative. "I'll do it," she said, feeling layers of courage unfold within her. "I want to confront him, make him understand what he's lost and what he's put us through." With a nod of agreement, they moved quietly, following the sounds to the heart of the impending confrontation. A murmur of voices filled the air, tinged with tension, anger, and the undertones of betrayal. Maria's heart raced, yet determination ignited a fire inside her, pushing her past the fear. In that moment of finality, Maria recognized she was about to step into a world that could either liberate her or bind her deeper into Jake's chaotic web. The stakes were undeniably high, and she stood ready to stake her claim, to see the truth rise to the surface, no matter the cost. "We can't hesitate. This is our moment," she whispered, positioning herself for the confrontation that loomed ahead. But just as they made their way closer, they heard the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked, a chilling reminder of the brutal reality ahead. What awaited them behind that door could change everything. Steeling herself for the unknown, Maria knew one thing for certain. The time had come to face the very danger she had been trying to avoid, and it was only a heartbeat away. Maria's breath hitched as the metallic click echoed in the corridor, stark against the rising crescendo of her apprehension. Time seemed to stall, thickening around her as the gravity of the moment sunk in.
She felt the walls closing in, but with every ounce of fear, another awakening surged, a newfound determination. That dread was no longer her master. She refused to be shackled by it. The driver's frame beside her shifted subtly. "Stay low," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but the urgency in his tone cut through to her core. Without realizing it, she shifted her stance, readying herself for a confrontation that felt inevitable. They pressed against the wall, shadows swallowing them whole. The driver cocked his head towards the door. "If they find us, it won't just be Jake you have to confront. It'll be all of his men, and I won't be able to protect you." His words burned with urgency, and for a moment, Maria felt the weight of doubt settle momentarily over her resolution. Who was she to think she could take on this whole world?
But she quickly reminded herself of the countless nights spent analyzing her life choices, weighing the risks, and how each moment had gradually forged her into the person she was today. It was a metamorphosis, one that had taught her resilience amid turmoil. "I can face them," she resolved, her voice steadier than before. "I've come too far to back down." He hesitated, mustering a glance her direction. She saw a flicker of respect in his eyes, mingled with concern. "All right, but we move on my signal. Get ready." As fear twisted its way through her, Maria summoned all the determination she had been nurturing. The echo of Jake's name resonated in her mind, an anchor pulling her back into the memories of manipulation and fear. But she was not that Maria anymore. She was someone who had learned to fight, someone who grasped her future with both hands, ready to reshape her reality. With a nod of acceptance to the driver, Maria readied herself. Each heartbeat that pulsed in her ears was a reminder of what she had endured and what was now at stake. When the door creaked open, she felt a swell of adrenaline rush through her. They had reached the threshold, the chosen moment. Men shuffled inside, laughter mingled with idle threats filled the air, and with it, a sense of impending chaos. Then, as if sensing an opportunity, she caught sight of the silhouette inside, an unmistakable figure leaning casually against a dimly lit wall. Jake. Her breath caught again, but this time the fear was eclipsed by an undeniable resolve. She instinctively stepped forward, nearly bursting through the threshold. It was an impulsive decision, but she knew she couldn't falter now. She had been fighting her whole life to regain her power, and this was it. A chorus of disbelief erupted amongst the men as they recognized her. "What the hell are you doing here?" one of them spat, confusion followed by hostility etched deeply on his face. "I'm taking back what's mine," Maria shot back, fierce defiance igniting her spirit. No longer the victim, she stood her ground. Jake's eyes widened, drowning in an amalgamation of shock and amusement. "You really think you're ready for this? You haven't even begun to understand the forces at play." The driver moved slightly behind her, vigilant yet unarmed. "You have no idea what you're dealing with, Maria," he cautioned, but she squared her shoulders, refusing to cower. The stakes had risen, yet so had her fortitude. A moment of silence stretched between them, laden with unresolved tensions and simmering threats. Maria could feel the rush of blood coursing through her veins, an electric surge of awareness piercing her consciousness. Here stood the embodiment of her past, the chaos that threatened to consume her. "Tell me what you know," she demanded, voice unwavering. "This game is over, Jake. No more lies." Just then, a loud thud rang out from the back of the room, a stark reminder of their vulnerability.
The men inside shifted, and she realized too late that the balance had tipped. "Get down!" the driver shouted, pushing her. But Maria was already defiant, poised on the edge of a decision that could alter everything. Her moment had arrived, but the danger loomed large. As confusion crashed like waves around them, Maria locked eyes with Jake, and in that volatile connection, she saw the reflection of her own struggle, the battle for self and emerging identity. The question echoed within her mind. Was she truly prepared to embrace the fight for her future, regardless of the risks shadowing her? And then a gunshot rang out, shattering the fray, as Maria braced for the storm to engulf her once and for all. The sound of the gunshot reverberated, slicing through the chaos like a knife. Time warped as Maria's adrenaline surged, drowning everything else. Her instincts kicked in. She had long trained herself to react swiftly to danger. Even now, as the realization rippled through the room, her focus honed in on the direction of the shot. "Move!" The driver grabbed her arm, his grip firm as he pulled her down towards the floor. She stumbled slightly, but steadied herself with a fierce determination. There was no room for hesitation now. The laughter that had filled the room vanished, replaced by shouts and the unnerving sound of chairs scraping against the floor. Her heart raced, each beat a relentless drum signaling both fear and the rush of empowerment. In this moment, Maria realized she had the potential to shift the tide of events. The very fabric of her past was about to weave into her future.
Keeping low, she scanned the room. Jake was crouched behind a table with two of his men, barking orders that sounded more desperate than authoritative. "Get her! Don't let her escape!" His voice sliced through her like a chilling reminder of the chains she had once worn. But she was done running. This fight was hers. A group of men moved to encircle them, weapons drawn, panic and confusion etched on their faces. They had never anticipated her presence. Jake's underestimation of her was her weapon against him. She took a deep breath, channeling that wave of fear into something more. The years of feeling small and powerless boiled within her, a phoenix rising from the ashes. "Now," the driver urged, breaking her moment of contemplation. As he launched towards the closest group of men, Maria followed instinctively. She could feel the flicker of make-or-break urgency galvanizing her every motion. But she needed more than just a wild rush forward. She had to be strategic. Pulling from the remnants of her past experiences, she zigzagged through the chaos towards a nearby wall, using the bodies as shields and the din as cover. Each step solidified her resolve. She remembered all those nights of practice in front of mirrors, poised and determined, the soft murmurs of her reflection whispering confidence. "Think, Maria,"
she reminded herself, scanning for anything that could turn the situation in her favor. A stack of overturned chairs caught her eye, providing a barricade she could manipulate. With deliberate intent, she dove behind the makeshift cover, crouching low as bullets began to zip past. "Keep moving," the driver shouted, his voice shaking but unwavering in authority. She felt emboldened by his presence. He had been a rock through the storm, someone who believed in her capabilities. Gathering her courage, Maria shifted her weight to push the chairs into the line of fire, creating an obstacle aimed toward Jake's men. She was no longer a pawn. In that instant, she was a player. The fear that had once seeped into her veins transformed into a tangible will. With each passing second, she could feel her uncertainties fade away, replaced by a new mantra: be bold, be fierce. "You have no idea what you're messing with," Jake howled from across the chaos, and his words struck her hard, a reminder of his lingering influence. But no more. She would show him what she had become. Taking a chance, Maria peeked from behind the chairs. The driver was creating space with bold defensive maneuvers, and through the haze of the fight, she saw an opening, an exit that could lead them away from this madness. "Let's go," Maria yelled, her voice breaking through her fear, turning what had been a frantic crawl into a full sprint. As they began to move, she felt an electric surge of freedom coursing through her. But just as they reached the edge of safety, she heard a guttural roar of anger behind her. "You can't leave, Maria. You belong to me." The words reverberated with the weight of possession, and in that moment, she realized this confrontation was just the beginning. Her feet slowed momentarily, caught in the pull of his demand. What did belonging even mean anymore? What had once felt like a chain now flickered with an opportunity for liberation. Fueled by a resolute commitment to herself, she steeled her heart against Jacob's voice, refusing to let his hold over her dictate her path. In the growing chaos, the world held its breath, and Maria bore down on the uncertainty ahead. Fear and empowerment coalesced within, battling for dominance, but one thing remained clear. She was ready to embrace whatever came next. The door that claimed her freedom was within reach, and as she grasped the handle, her next decision stood at the precipice of change. Could she truly outrun the shadows of her past? Before she could fully turn the knob, gunfire erupted once more, the cracks in her emerging reality ringing ominously in her ears. Gunfire erupted, shattering the fragile sense of freedom she had just grasped. The chaotic swell of voices and the acrid smell of gunpowder pressed against her senses. Maria's instincts flared, sharpening her focus on the doorway that symbolized not just escape, but a reclaiming of her narrative. She could hear Jake's threats ricocheting through the air like bullets, each word a reminder of a past she had fought valiantly to overcome. But today was not about running away. It was about facing the truth lurking just beyond the horizon of her fear. "You can't escape from me, Maria." His voice, laced with menace, only fueled her resolve. "Keep moving," the driver commanded, urgency electrifying his tone. He rattled her back to the moment with an intensity that lit a flame within her heart. Without a second thought, they surged toward the door, their movements fueled by the desperation of survival. Maria swung the door wide open, and the night air rushed in, mingling with the adrenaline surging through her veins. She had emerged from the depths of despair, empowered by her decisions. Freedom lay before her, shimmering under the moonlight like a promise waiting to be fulfilled.
As they raced into the shadows, every heartbeat rang a reminder of her choices, choices that fortified her spirit against the overwhelming tide of uncertainty. But the danger was not left behind. Jake's men were quick on their heels, shadows dancing behind them, wielding threats that could spiral back into their lives at any moment. "Where do we go?" Maria asked, breathing heavily as they darted through the estate's expansive grounds. She glanced over her shoulder, the unease gnawing at her when she couldn't see the driver's expression. "Follow me," he instructed, the authority in his voice bolstering her resolve. The two fled through dense hedges, making their way toward a service entrance that led to the exterior of the estate. Speed was essential now, survival depended on it. The driver halted suddenly, turning to her, urgency sparking within his gaze. "This is about more than just escaping, Maria. We need to confront Jake with what we have. You're not just some maid anymore. You're someone who knows the truth." It resonated deep within her, the essence of empowerment. She wasn't just running, she was reclaiming her life, her family, her future. Maria nodded, her determination solidifying. "We need to gather evidence. I won't let him threaten me or anyone else again." With their newfound mission clear, they ducked behind a series of vehicles in the dimly lit parking area, surveying the estate in silence. Shadows still flickered, but an unexpected calm washed over her. Every confrontation had carved her into a stronger version of herself, someone who was not just a victim, but a warrior for her own truth. As they drew closer to the edge of the property, they spotted a figure lingering near an unmarked car. The driver's menacing aura was unmistakable, but Maria felt an unexpected surge of courage course through her. This was no longer about fear. It was about unveiling a truth that could no longer remain hidden. "Go!" she whispered fiercely, her spirit igniting with the promise of confrontation. They advanced toward the figure, adrenaline heightening her senses.
As they moved, Maria felt the heaviness of doubt dissipate into the night. She was ready to reclaim what Jake believed he could control. When they reached the car, a chill ran down her spine. Jake's driver, a man she had seen flitting in and out of shadows, stood guarding vital information. It could either confirm or shatter the fragile threads of her ambition. "Stop right there," he shouted, raising his weapon. But Maria stood firm, defiance radiating from her presence as she stepped forward. "I'm not afraid of you," she declared, a familiar sense of power surging through her veins like wildfire. The moment hung suspended as silence engulfed them, the standoff palpable and electric. In that instant, Maria understood the stakes were immense. The outcome would forge her destiny. Each lesson absorbed in the corridors of fear had space to bloom into actionable strength. The driver threw a glance at her, then surged forward, leading the charge and sending a shockwave of energy through her. Together, they bombarded the man, overcoming the remnants of intimidation with decisive action. The driver grabbed him, disarming him deftly, as Maria felt the thrill of victory crystallizing around her. "I know your secrets, Jake," she yelled, her challenge rippling into the night. "I will not be a pawn in your game anymore." With each word, she felt the world shift, her heart solidifying in recognition of who she had become. No longer was she entangled in the fears of her past. Instead, she was forging a new narrative, blessed with empowerment and determination. As they finally moved past the threat of Jake's driver, the horizon now loomed boldly ahead. They were no longer bound by a cycle of manipulation. They were armed with truth, a revelation processed, and a new trajectory explored. "Let's go to the authorities," the driver said, his tone infused with a blend of urgency and respect. Maria nodded, confidence igniting within her. Yes, it's time to reveal everything. Within the walls of a world constructed from fear and darkness, she felt the dawn illuminating her path, unveiling the barriers of secrecy holding her in chains. The night poured forth endless possibilities. She was finally prepared to take the reins of her own life. As they slipped out into the night, Maria understood. This was her triumph of spirit, a culmination of all the struggles that tested her resolve. The battle was not just external, it was internal. She took a deep breath, soaking in the cool air as they set forth towards solid ground, the promise of empowerment woven into the fabric of her future. She may have walked into shadows, but now she was stepping into the light, ready to embrace the new narrative she had built with her own hands.
The doors of opportunity swung wide open as she prepared for the next chapter of her life, one defined by her truth, unwavering resilience, and the profound understanding that she was capable of becoming her own beacon in a world that had once sought to extinguish her light. Now, more than ever, She felt alive, armed with the power of her decisions and the courage of her convictions. The time had truly come to shine. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.